we need a piece of our art paper. We will need a lead pencil and a pen. So this is either the pen that you got out of your art pack, or if I know a couple people had the little tip of their pen go. So you might just use an ordinary pen, or I think someone asked could they use a Sharpie. A Sharpie will work as well. So we need a pen to draw with, and then to finish off our picture, of course, we're going to finish off with some watercolors. So I've got my watercolor paints and paintbrush, and of course some water ready for the end. And then while we're getting our materials, so for this afternoon, for our last artwork, we're going to be learning how to draw a whale. So this one is a humpback whale. And for the background, I've given him a bit of a space kind of background, but for today, you could also do a underwater watercolored background as well. So we'll go through a few different options of what colors you could use in the background. But we're going to start by drawing our whale and then outlining him. And as you can see, if I just bring it up a bit closer, you can see these sort of little thin striped lines that I've got along the bottom of the whale and a little bit on his, what do we call that, flipper, and along the tail and the back. And so what that is we're going to be using these sort of lines, so these diagonal lines, to create a bit of a shadow to him. So a bit like when we did our sneakers and we sort of put extra dots. Remember how we were doing the stippling and we were dotting our picture, and we put little dotted extra dots in the darker areas? So very similar, we're using lines to create that shadow. So it's a very useful technique, especially if you're using something like a pen where you can't sort of push harder or lighter. It's all going to be the one color. So by doing these directional lines so that all the lines are going in roughly the same way, we get a bit of a sense of that shadow too. So a bit of art technique there. Okay, but we're going to start by drawing. So I'm going to move my camera down. And just like always, we're going to sort of do, no, I'll just move it so we've got, there we go. We're going to lightly press down with our pencil, but I'll, of course, press a bit darker so that you can see it on the screen, especially because the shadows are playing up a bit today. It's the catch of coming into winter. It gets a bit darker earlier on, but I've got to have the lights on to make it a bit more noticeable. So we've got our picture and we want our piece of paper landscape. So with the short sides of the page either side of us and the long sides of the page at the top and bottom. So that way we can fit our whale, of course, across the page, because whales are, of course, quite large. Okay, so to start our picture, we're going to be drawing the top part of the whale. So we're sort of drawing, well, I suppose almost like his spine from the tip of his head all the way down to his tail. So we want to take up, as you know, we can go across the page because we're not going to go any wider than this first line that we draw. So the line that we're drawing is, I've got to slowly describe this. We're going to curve up, and then we're going to curve down in the middle, and then we're going to curve back up at the end. So it's a bit like I suppose like a bow, or actually even if you were drawing sort of the in-between of someone's lips is another way of drawing it. So I'm going to start at one end of the page because I want my whale to take up most of the page. So I've sort of got about, a bit over a finger space or 2 finger spaces from the end of the page. And I'm going to go, so remember I'm going to do a curve up first. And then as I get towards the middle of the page, and I'll hold my paper up after this so you can see it, I'm going to curve down a bit. So I'm curving down as we're in the middle of the page. And then I'm going to curve back up when I get to the top of the page. So hang on, I'll hold that up. It's a bit tricky to see. There we go. So it's almost like a, I don't know, it sort of starts off as like drawing a frown, and then you turn it into a smile and it frowns again. a little wave shape. As you can see, I've sort of gone, you know, a little bit of space on this end and a little bit of space on the other end, but I've filled my page. And so it's sort of going to give us a nice big space for our whale. For our sort of long whale shape. Okay. Just make sure I've got my piece of paper in the right spot. And so what this does is this will sort of be the whale's head in this first curve, or I suppose that was the last curve we drew, wasn't it? And then it goes down to where we're going to end up putting a little fin, and then this part will end up being where his tail finishes. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sort of draw the bottom half of the whale, and this will give us a good spot to fill in all of the rest of the whale. So where we're going to draw that is, I'm trying to think how long we need him to be. Probably about here. So I've came in a little bit, so I'm just going to draw a dot actually so you can really see where I'm drawing it. So this is where I'm going to start my drawing. So we've got our original curve. I've just put a little dot here to know where I'm going to start. So it's sort of, again, it's about a finger space between our line that we started. Oh, we've got some more people joining in. Okay, well, we'll re-go over the first line, girls. Don't worry. So we've just started. So we've got our piece of paper and our pencil. And then on our piece of paper, we've drawn this 3 curved shape. So we've gone one curve that goes up, and then as we get towards the middle of the page, we've drawn another curve going down. And then once we sort of come up from that, we're going to draw another last curve going up. And that should take up most of the page, like from one end to the other. So this is going to be our whale's head, and down this end is going to be where our whale's tail is going to go. So it's just this sort of, I said, it's like a bit of a bow, or if you look in between, if someone's got their mouth shut, you actually sort of draw this sort of shape too. It's like a curve up, curve down, and then curve back up. Funny looking shape. Okay.
Is it in the middle of the page?
Yeah, sort of a little bit in the middle of the page. You could be a little bit high. No, it's a little bit higher than the middle of the page. But the middle of the page will work as well. Just depends where we want our whale sitting, but this is actually the top of the whale. So hang on, I'll hold up my whale here. Ooh. So this is actually this line here that we're drawing. It's a bit, like I said, it looks a bit funny at the moment to think that that's going to make up our whale's body. I've just put a dot, but I think I might give him just looking at our other whale, I think I need it a bit further along, probably about there. Now I've just put a dot where we're going to be starting our next line. So where we started our curve, sort of, okay, how many finger spaces? Probably about 3 finger spaces. So just as the curve's starting to go up, I've just sort of put a little dot a bit below it, and it's going to help us shape the bottom of our whale. So this is sort of the skinniest part because this is where his tail is going to start. And so as we draw, we're going to connect back up with the other side of the line, but we're going to, of course, get wider. So I'm going to put the paper down to show you how to draw that, but I just thought I'd show sort of where I'm starting, because sometimes when we're drawing these shapes, it looks a bit different when I have it down on the piece of paper, down flat. So I've got my little dot to help me remember. So just as soon as the curve starts to get to its highest point, I've just put a bit of a dot there. And then This is a bit of a tricky shape. This one's just sort of a curved, which way is that? That's a curved down line. So I suppose almost like a smiley line, which we want to then bring it back up to connect with the end of the first line. There we go. I'll hold it up so you can see it a bit better. And straight away it's starting to look a lot more whale shaped than that first shape. It's funny how that curved line, it sort of doesn't look like it's going to be a whale, and then the second you add this bottom one. So what I've done is, as we've gotten to that higher point of our first curved line, I've just sort of made a little mark about a finger space below, and then I've drawn a big curved line to reach back to that the end of the first line that we drew. It's almost like drawing, you could draw all sorts of little fishes from this shape too, couldn't you? So we've got 3 curved lines above and then 1 big curved line below. But because we've sort of started up here, as it gets further away, as you can see, our body gets bigger. And so yours could also be a bit wider than this as well if you wanted an even bigger whale. But this is sort of our body of our whale drawn with those 2 lines. 2 lines to make up our, make sure my picture's in screen. As I said, usually a lot of our pictures, it takes a bit longer before it starts looking like it, but already I think it's got that bit of a whale shape to it. Okay. But of course, we've got this empty space where we sort of stopped, so we're going to need to fill this in, and this is going to be our whale's tail. So to draw our whale's tail, now we're only sort of seeing the side of our whale, so we're only seeing one part of him. So just bring it over for a second so you can see it. So what I mean is that we're only seeing, you know how whales usually sort of have their tail split in 2? Well, we're only seeing one side of it. We're only seeing sort of one almost leaf shape for his tail, with the idea being that if you were to then come around, you'd see the other part of his tail. So it's almost like 2 leaves when we're drawing when we're looking at a whale's tail. So like I said, we're going to draw sort of a leaf shape. Now, my one looks a little bit short on this end, so I'm just going to make this line a little bit curved down a bit more, just so it's a bit longer a tail. I'd like it to have a nice tail. But then all it is drawing a curved line from the end of our first line to the start of our second line. So I'm just going to draw a big curve. Oh, someone's cracking their cars. So I've just done lots of curved lines today, actually. So just from the end of our first line that we drew, which I made it just that little bit longer. Yours might be long enough, but mine, I just thought it needed to be that little bit longer. And then I've drawn a nice curve joining up with that second line that we drew. And like I said, it sort of looks a bit like if you were drawing a leaf. It's a little bit of a leaf shape for the whale's tail. So this is just getting in our shapes. And of course, if you saw the final part of the whale's tail, you'll notice that we add a little bit of sort of markings to the bottom of his tail, so it's not just straight. We give it a little bit of a ripple, but we'll add that once we're done. So we've got a tail. The next thing we're going to add is the whale's fin and his flipper. So we might start with his fin. So his fin goes, of course, on the top of his back. And humpback whales only have a very little fin. Bit of a tongue twister today with these words. And the fin is actually right sort of near the back of the near the back of the body rather than up the front of the body. So where again, I'm looking at the first line that we drew. So we curved up and then we curved down. Now where we've got that sort of down part in the middle of our whale, we're going to draw just a little line starting to go up. So it's almost like drawing a little triangle or a diagonal line from our, no, I just want one line there. And then we're going to do a little curved line to connect it back to our body. So again, I'll hold it up. So we've got from the first line that we drew in the curved down section, so in the middle of the whale, when we sort of get just past the middle, we're going to draw a diagonal line pointing up. So it's almost going in the same direction as where our whales are. Oh, beautiful. And then we're just going to draw a little curved line to join it back to the whale's body. Oh, lovely. Some lovely whales' bodies. Not many features that need to be added to a whale. They're very, once you sort of work out all the little parts, they're very nice to draw. Now, of course, if you were drawing, could you reuse this as a dolphin? You could redraw this as a dolphin if you made this line a bit more skinnier. And of course, they have like a bit of a beak. But again, their fin is a bit closer to the middle of their body. Their body sort of arches the opposite way to the whale. Actually, you know what? If we turned it upside down, then it'd be more like a dolphin. Okay. So the last thing we need to add in terms of our big body features for our whale is our whale's flipper. So the front, well, they only really have one flipper, don't they? One either side. And so again, because we're looking at our whale side on, we're only going to see the flipper that's on this side. We won't really notice the one on the back side, on his other side. So to draw the whale's flipper, it's sort of a...
Remember how we have to do the other one on the other side? It's like how you have to do the echidna and we have to do a little bit for the legs.
That's right. That's right. Our echidna, we had a little bit for the legs. Now you could add, so in my one, you can't see the second one, but we could add, yeah, a little curved line that matches up with it as a behind it. The only bonus is that whales are quite large, so it's sort of a bit further away, so it could almost be exactly behind it. But I will show where that will go if we're adding it. So again, to draw the flipper, it's sort of actually very similar to our tail shape, that sort of leafy kind of shape. So the flipper goes, right, where our bottom curve is, we want to find sort of this low point, which is kind of near the front. So it's sort of near the, closer to the front of the body of the whale rather than in the middle. And to draw it, I'm just trying to see which line we draw first. Okay, so to draw it, I come sort of just into the whale's body. So just like when we drew our echidna's front leg, it's going to be sort of inside the whale's body because it's coming out from his body. And we're going to draw a curved line. And it sort of curves back a bit. Oh, that one. No, curved up a bit. I'm going to draw a curved line first. Hold it up so you can see. So you see it sort of curves back. It's almost heading towards our whale's, the rest of our whale's body. And then just like our tail, we need to then join it back up, of course, with the rest of our whale. So to go back, and it's not as curvy on this side. This side's a bit more straighter. You could almost draw a straight line if you'd like. But it's just sort of to there.
Is it a diagonal line?
Yes. So hang on, I'll hold it up. So it's just a bit of a diagonal line going back towards the whale's body. And I'm just sort of stopping about a finger space away from the first line. Oh, so what I did was I've just drawn a diagonal line going back towards our whale's flipper. So it's about a finger space away from the first diagonal line of his flipper. But as you can see, it's a bit more of a straight line, like sort of heading back rather than that curvy shape that we had before. So we've got our flipper lines. Everyone all good with our, oh, beautiful. I can see some whale flippers. Awesome. I think my computer was just deciding it didn't want to do stuff for the day. Always the way. Okay. So we've got our main features of our whale. We've got his fin and his flipper and his tail. So the last part we need to add before we can start sort of drawing over our whale and adding a few more features to make him look a bit more whale instead of it just being a plain drawing of him. So we need to add our whale's mouth and his eye. And for whales, I find it actually easier to draw the mouth in first because, of course, whales have these very large mouths and their eye actually starts sort of at the bottom, just above their mouth. So by drawing in our mouth, we will be drawing, sort of help us work out where his eye needs to go. So to draw in the mouth, we've got, again, it's a day of drawing lots of different curves. So we've got a bit of a different curve to draw. I'm just trying to think where the best way to start it is. No, it's probably better to start it on the body rather than out. So we've got the bottom, we've got the start of the whale's flipper, and then just above it and a bit more towards the head, we're going to draw our curved line. So to start off with, we're going to curve down. Yep. So I'm drawing it upside down, so I've got to think whether it's up or down. Curve down, and then we curve up to the front of the whale's mouth. And that gives him a bit of a smiley. Oh, hang on. What happened there? No. Yeah, that's right. And then sort of curves back down as we get, that's what happened. So we curve down and then curve up. And then as we get towards his head, we curve back down just slightly. There we go. Hold that up because that was a bit of a tricky saying. And that just gives him a bit more of a smiley face because we want a happy whale. So it sort of curves up a little bit and then it curves down. It curves down and then it curves up a little bit and then it curves down as we get to the front of the whale's head. So it's got quite a large head. It's a bit of a tongue twister there of which way it curves. But sort of like he starts off smiling and then he frowns a little bit and then he smiles as he gets to the end of his head. But then, as I said, his eye sort of sits just above his mouth, right near the end of it, almost sort of halfway where that little curve is there. So to draw his eye, and they actually have quite, I suppose it's quite a small eye compared to the rest of their body. So I'm just going to draw a circle. Ooh, okay. Draw a circle for his eye. And then I'm just going to lightly draw a little half circle below it and a little half circle above it. That sort of will help us when we're drawing the creases. So there he is. So he's got his big mouth, big long mouth, and then I've got the eye, and like I said, it's sort of where his mouth starts, the eye sort of sits just above it or a little bit across from it, and then there's a circle and then a little curve above and below his eye, because that will help us when we're drawing. Oh, if I bring over what he'll end up having. See how he's got sort of a little bit of a curve above and below. I suppose it's sort of like your eyelids, a bit like eyelids for the so just sort of pops up there that he's got this little eyelid look. So that is our whale. There's sort of all the features of our whale. And then with our pencil, because it's always handy to have this drawn in with a pencil before we use our pen, is to make him look a bit more realistic rather than just being a straight drawn whale. We're going to add a few little bumps to different parts of his body. So if I bring back our finished picture, you can see that our whale's got a little bit of a bump along the front of his flipper, a little bit of a bump along the bottom of his tail, and then a few bumps just along the front of his head and a couple underneath, like on his chin. And so that just sort of takes it from being just a straight drawing of a whale to give it that little bit of a more realistic features. And so they don't look like they're just, well, so far we've drawn lots of curved shapes, haven't we? Curved and diagonal shapes. So I might start with, which way am I going to start? I might start with his tail. So for his tail, so along our curved line that we've got along the bottom of our tail, I just do sort of little bumps. So almost like little half circles. And so when I'm using my pen, or I'll hold that a bit closer because it's a bit small, isn't it? When I'm using my pen, I'm just going to trace around the outside of these, and then I'm going to rub out the little pencil line that shows our nice straight line. But it's just having a couple of little bumps along his tail to give him that bit more of a bit of texture, I suppose, to his tail. And then the same goes for along the front of his flipper. But again, all I'm doing is just drawing, like I said, little half circles, and you can have some that are a bit bigger and some that are smaller. And then when we use our pen, then I just remember to only trace around the edge and sort of stop about there. So I've sort of done some little bumpy shapes along there. And then, oh, we need sort of like a little blowhole part too. That's another feature we can add too. So above our whale's eye, if we sort of move our pencil to the top of his head, so that top line that we drew, and just draw a little, make sure we've got a little bump just there, which again, we're going to be using our pen to draw that. So that's sort of like where his blowhole is, because of course whales are mammals, so they need to breathe air, so they need somewhere to breathe air. And then the last part is adding a couple of bumps to the top of his head and just under his chin. And so these ones are just sort of little bumps. You don't need too many. I'm just going to do 3. But then the ones on his head and chin, if you just do a couple of little, like I said, they're little half circles just on the actual body of the whale. And I'll hold this up in a second so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to add a couple on his chin. So I've got some inside the whale and then some just on the outside. I'll hold it up so you can see our whale. And this is one thing that, especially with the ones inside the whale, if you decide he needs more, you can also add some more when we're drawing it with the pen. Or if there's some that you don't want, well, then you just don't draw over them and you rub them out. It's just so he's got a couple on his face. And that gives him that sort of bit of a whaley look. And of course on his flipper. And then we've got that little curve just above his eye, which is going to be his blowhole. And then I've just got a couple of bumps on his tail. That's our whale's tail. Lots of little features to it. So I might give him another big bump on his tail. And then before we start using our pen, again, I just find it easier if you've got the pencil lines to know what you're drawing, is just along the bottom half of his body, we're going to give him a couple of striped lines. So if I bring my picture over, you can see what I'm talking about here. So I'm not talking about the diagonal stripes, I'm talking about these sort of striped lines which go under the whale's body, because they've got like a bit of a different texture under their body. So these are just lines that probably start sort of near the end of the whale's body, and you're just sort of following along that bottom line that you drew. Of course, we don't want to draw on the flipper. And then they come up and they stop just near where all the little bumps are that we drew. And we probably want, I don't know, however many will fit. But you sort of start from that same point because they can get less noticeable as they go down the whale's body. I think my one's going to fit 3 today by the looks of it. I've got 3 lines. But your whale might have more room. Might actually have room for 1 more along that side. I'll hold him up. So I've just got some little lines underneath his body to sort of show that different texture of underneath a whale. So that is all of our pencil lining. And so then the next part is, like I said, we've either your felt tip pen or a regular pen, or you could even use a Sharpie. We want a nice black outline because that'll make our whale stand out. Is we're going to outline our whale, but when we're outlining the bumps, we're just sort of outlining the outside. We don't need to outline that inside part. And the same as we don't need to outline where the whale's fin joins to the body. We're just sort of tracing around sort of the outside. Oh, I can see some cute whales. They look so cute. So it's almost like we're going all around the outside line, and then we're going to draw in our lines for underneath. And of course, don't worry, we'll do his eye in detail when I get to the pen part. Or do we want to draw that in? We might draw that in pencil first so I don't forget. So again, to draw his eye, just like we did with our echidna, we sort of draw a little circle up in the one corner for light. And then you can draw a smaller, or you could color in his eye all dark, or you could draw a smaller circle inside for his pupil. I'll hold him up. So you can either color in all of his eye black, or you could just color in that middle circle. But it's very good to have that little circle up in the corner for the light shining. Okay, but I'm going to start outlining with my pen. And so it's just a straight outline. We're sort of following it along just as though we were using our pencil. And then when the pen's dried a bit, that's when you go back and get a rubber and you can rub out all the extra lines. But make sure you leave your pen or your texter to dry for a little bit, because otherwise when you go to rub out the lines, then the pen can smudge. So I'm going to start, which way am I going to start? I might start at the top of the line. So again, I'm not drawing this line, I'm just drawing along the outside edge. Drawing along. And the same with our little bumps. When we get to the bumps, I'm just drawing the top line of the bump, and I'll hold it up in a second so you can just see in case you're not sure. But I'm just drawing along the tops of them. So when we rub out the pencil line, they will just be, oh, there we go, and the body of the whale. So I'll hold this up first while I've done that top line. As you can, oh, there we go, we can see the pen line. So I've drawn along the top. So I've just sort of gone over those little curved semicircle shapes, but not joined the bottom. And then I've left this part, I haven't drawn it. So it's just sort of one shape, that fin. We want to make sure we've, where's the whale gone? There. So again, for the bottom, I'm just tracing over the little bumps that I've got. And just like drawing these little bumps, if you were drawing a furry animal, instead of doing little curved bumps, you could do little triangle shapes, and that can then act as little bits of tufts of fur. So another thing for drawing animals to, like I said, go from being just sort of simple shapes into being a bit more, I suppose, realistic. And to give that feel, a bit of texture to it. But for the whale's got these sort of bumpy shapes. I'm just tracing along the edge. And then when I finish, I'm going to come back and draw these stripes. But I just want to make sure I've got all the outlines. I'm just going around all the outline lines. Oh, he's got some little bumps along his chin. I can draw in the whale's mouth one. There's the whale's mouth.
I finished tracing the outside of the whale.
Ah, beautiful. Okay. So then we can add, like I said, we can draw over the top of those little bumps that we drew inside our whale, like on his head and chin. Almost like, it's a bit like drawing little waves, little wave lines. So I've got some little bumps there. And then, oh, I've got to draw the whale's eye. I'm going to draw his eye. I'm going to colour in the middle of his eye black. And of course we can go over those, the little curved lines above and below his eye. And then trace over those sort of stripes under the whale's, for the whale's belly. I'm going to trace these. So much trace.